Skeleton video game characters. We see them everywhere in the video game genre. Whether we see them in horror or adventure or romance even. That's a weird one. But still, we see skeletons everywhere. But out of all these skeletons, there are some that just look abnormal. When the idea of having a skeleton character in your game, there's a chance that it won't be up to scale. And I'm gonna be honest with you, with most of these, it's not really up to scale. And so, that's the question. Which skeleton character actually looks like a skeleton? And I can already hear people going, it's just a video game, you don't need to really analyze it. And to those people I say, it's spooky month, what are you gonna do? Before we begin, I need to preface that I won't be discussing any mods or hacks or anything that implements a skeleton. It has to be in the game when it's created. So that means no using the game's file to find secret skeletons or anything along the lines of adding your own skeleton. It has to be there already. So let's get started. First, I'm going to analyze this diagram of a skeleton and I'm just going to pick out the bits that stand out. For example, this section, the ulna and the radius. It's these two bones that allow us to twist our arms in a way. What they do is they just overlap each other and that's it. But let's say if you were to be stabbed in that bit of the arm, well, lucky you. This video is not 100% factual, nor does it have any research done with injuries. We see the same bit on the leg, and it's the tibia and fibula, which is practically just the same thing as the arm. There's also the ribs, with there being 24 ribs altogether, 12 on each side. There's also the eye sockets, the nose sockets, and the teeth, all located on the skull. And for the bit where the skull and the jaw interlocked, you can see a slight hole for the ears. And finally, there's 300 bones in the baby and 206 in a human adult, and we will take all of this stuff into accountability when we analyze these skeletons. Alright, now, let's begin with the one and only Sans and Papyrus. Now these two characters' designs are very interesting, mainly for the fact that they're wearing clothes, so it'll be a bit difficult to analyze them. So going off of what we have, they both have nose sockets, but only Papyrus has eye sockets. We see that Sans also has them, but there's two white dots. But the most notable thing about them is both their jaws and skulls are fully connected, and they also don't have the interesting arm or leg bones. So, going off what we have, they are not skeletons. Also, just one quick thing to note, is it just me or does it look like Sans has a gigantic overbite? I know people say it's a smile, but I mean, come on, it's funnier to think that it's an overbite. Next, we have Spinal from Killer Instinct. If we look at his design from the Super Nintendo, we can see that he does look exactly like a skeleton, but there's just one problem with him. We see that he has the normal jaw and skull a skeleton would have, a normal arm and leg a skeleton would have. He even has the exact designs a foot and a hand would have. So what's the issue? Well, remember when I said that a normal human skeleton would have 12 ribs on each side? Well, Spinal only has 7. Now, I know you can make the argument, well, he's a fighter, so maybe he lost all his other ribs fighting. Well, to you I say, fuck off, this isn't my video. So, Spinal is not a skeleton. Next up, we have Dry Bones from the Mario series. Oh god, an animal? I didn't account for this. Well, going off the features of a tortoise, he does look like one, but with a tortoise, they have a hole at the back of the skull. And as you can see, Dry Bones does not have one. As well as that, he does have somewhat of eyes in his eye sockets, so that means he is not a skeleton. Then there's Manny Calavera from Grim Fandango, and he does come across as being a skeleton. I would agree with the fact that on his head it's mainly just designs, but I will not agree with the fact that he only has 4 fingers, while skeletons normally have 5. But you could make the argument that he had an injury in his past life, so I'll accept that. Although his skull size might not be up to scale, you could make the argument that it's a birth defect. I didn't want to go there, but hey, we're going there now. So, he looks up to scale. But, another problem that we see often, his skull and jaw are fully attached. So, he is not a skeleton. Now let's move on to Sir Daniel Fortesque from Medieval. Now with Daniel Fortesque, a lot of his body is covered up by armor, so we're gonna have to work with what we have, and that's only the arm and the head. Just by looking at the arm, we can clearly tell that he is a skeleton. It has all the parts there, it's all up to scale, it's perfect. But when we move on to the head, we get a bit confused. Although you can make the argument that his jaw was lost from battle, you can't discuss the argument that he has no backbones in his spine. Normally with a spine you have these little bits of bones that are sticking out, but with Sir Daniel Fortesque they're just not there. So he is not a skeleton. Now we have the skeletons from Sea of Thieves, the most common enemy in the game. Now just by looking at them, they immediately look like skeletons. Everything is up to scale, they are perfect, but you can clearly tell that everything about them is disproportional. Most of their bones are way too big, like the ribs, but others are way too small, like the fingers and the legs. So going off with that, they are not at all a skeleton. Well, that took a while. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, comment and subscribe. Well, I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye!